In November 1940, a small factory in Toledo, Ohio just pulled off what seemed impossible. In exactly 75 days, they designed, built, and delivered a vehicle that looked like it was assembled by someone's uncle in a garage. Boxy, doorless, with a windshield that folded flat like a broken promise. German intelligence officers took one look at photographs of this thing and literally laughed. They called it hastily assembled and lacking engineering sophistication. But here's the thing about underestimating America. It tends to bite you in the ass. Within 4 years, those same German officers would be risking their lives to capture these machines, prizing them above nearly everything else in their arsenal, and openly admitting that the United States had created something their brilliant engineers simply couldn't match. This isn't just the story of a vehicle. This is the story of how American industrial might, disguised as a simple quarter-ton truck, helped win the most devastating war in human history. The Germans had every reason to be confident. They'd spent years perfecting the Kübelwagen, Ferdinand Porsche's masterpiece derived from Hitler's beloved people's car. It was lighter, more sophisticated, engineered with typical German precision. Why waste resources on complex four-wheel drive when clever engineering could achieve the same results? They looked at America's crude little truck and saw amateur hour. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between sophistication and effectiveness. What the Germans didn't understand was that this wasn't some rushed job. The American Jeep was the product of the most brutal automotive competition in history. In June 1940, the U.S. Army issued specifications that were basically impossible. Build us a quarter-ton reconnaissance vehicle that can carry 3 men and equipment, travel cross-country in any terrain, be simple enough for anyone to drive, rugged enough to survive combat, and light enough for 4 soldiers to lift when it gets stuck. Oh, and you have 49 days to deliver a working prototype. Most manufacturers took one look at those requirements and said, absolutely not. 3 companies were crazy enough to try. American Bantam, a tiny firm that had been building miniature cars, shocked everyone by actually delivering on schedule. But the Army had concerns. Could a company that built 1,200 vehicles in 1939 possibly manufacture tens of thousands for the military? So they invited Willys Overland and Ford to study Bantam's design and submit their own versions. What followed was automotive Darwinism at its finest. Bantam pioneered the layout. Willys contributed the powerful Go Devil engine cranking out 60 horsepower. Ford refined the body design with that now iconic flat hood. The Army took the best of all 3, standardized everything, and by November 1941, just weeks before Pearl Harbor, production lines in Toledo and Detroit were churning out identical vehicles. The Willys MB and Ford GPW were born. Here's what emerged: 132 inches long, 62 inches wide, 2,160 pounds of pure utility. That Go Devil engine could push this thing to 60 miles per hour on roads and crawl over terrain that would stop a mountain goat. Ground clearance of 8 3/4 inches meant it could go places conventional vehicles couldn't even dream of reaching. The 4-wheel drive system was so simple a farm boy could figure it out. Just pull some levers on the floor. Most importantly, it was designed for durability over precision. Loose tolerances meant it actually got more reliable under combat conditions, not less. The name itself tells you everything about American practicality. While historians debate the exact origin, most agree Jeep came from soldiers pronouncing GP, general purpose or government procurement. A journalist riding in one of the early models asked what it was called. The driver said, "It's a Jeep." The article went nationwide. Willys trademarked the name in 1943, but soldiers had been using it for 2 years already. That's America for you. The marketing department catches up to the guys actually doing the work. General George Marshall called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. War correspondent Ernie Pyle, who followed American troops through every major campaign, wrote that it was as faithful as a dog, as strong as a mule, and as agile as a goat. But these weren't just feel-good quotes from the home front. These assessments came from men who watched the Jeep perform miracles in places where miracles were the difference between life and death. The first real test came in North Africa during Operation Torch in late 1942. Thousands of Jeeps hit the beaches with the invasion force, and German soldiers got their first close look at what Americans had been mass-producing. The initial German assessment was mixed. They acknowledged the speed and mobility but criticized the fuel consumption and lack of armor protection. One intelligence report noted that Americans seemed to have unlimited numbers of these vehicles, which German analysts interpreted as wasteful overproduction rather than tactical necessity. They were about to learn just how wrong that assessment was. At German headquarters in Tunisia, officers examining their first captured Jeep found plenty to criticize. The exposed engine could be damaged by debris. The canvas top provided zero protection. The fuel tank mounted under the driver's seat seemed like catastrophic design. But there were troubling observations too. The power-to-weight ratio was remarkable. 60 horsepower moving only 2,100 pounds meant acceleration that left German vehicles in the dust. The four-wheel drive worked flawlessly in deep sand. Most disturbing were those production figures in captured documents. One Jeep every 90 seconds during peak production. German intelligence officers recalculated multiple times. Certain there was a translation error. There wasn't. By early 1943, American factories had produced over 177,000 Jeeps. Germany's total production of all light military vehicles barely exceeded 50,000. The implications were staggering. If American industrial capacity could produce reconnaissance vehicles in such quantities, what did that suggest about tanks, artillery, aircraft? The laughter stopped in Tunisia. By March 1943, German forces were actively seeking to capture American Jeeps. After the Battle of Kasserine Pass, retreating Wehrmacht units took every operational Jeep they could find. Officers wrote in after-action reports that captured American vehicles proved invaluable for reconnaissance and command functions. The reasons became clear as the campaign progressed. Tunisia's terrain combined rocky mountain passes, deep sand wadis, and coastal roads in varying states of repair. German vehicles struggled. The Kübelwagen, despite its clever design, lacked power to climb steep grades while carrying full loads. Its rear-wheel drive, adequate in testing, proved inadequate when speed meant survival. Heavier German vehicles consumed precious fuel at rates that strained already overstretched supply lines. The American Jeep seemed purpose-built for exactly these conditions. Its powerful engine pulled it up grades that stopped Kübelwagens. Four-wheel drive maintained traction where rear-wheel drive vehicles spun helplessly. Most critically, captured Jeeps came with something German vehicles lacked: abundant spare parts. American logistics were so efficient that maintenance depots held massive stocks of replacement components. German mechanics found they could keep captured Jeeps running indefinitely just by raiding American supply dumps. Oberst Wolfgang Müller, commanding a reconnaissance battalion in Tunisia, wrote in his journal that his men captured 6 American Jeeps and immediately put them into service. Within 2 weeks, he requested that his German vehicles be replaced entirely with captured American equipment. The Jeeps were faster, more reliable, and easier to maintain than anything in his original motor pool. When his request was denied due to fuel concerns, he noted bitterly that his Kübelwagens were consuming nearly as much fuel while covering half the distance. By May 1943, when Axis forces collapsed in North Africa, approximately 250,000 German and Italian soldiers entered Allied captivity. Among the abandoned equipment were several hundred captured American Jeeps that German units had been operating. Allied intelligence officers cataloging abandoned Axis equipment were surprised to find so many of their own vehicles in German motor pools. Interrogations revealed a consistent pattern. Given the choice between a German Kübelwagen and a captured American Jeep, officers overwhelmingly preferred the Jeep. The intelligence reports reaching Berlin were uncomfortable reading. American industrial capacity was producing vehicles in quantities Germany could never match. The American Jeep, initially dismissed as primitive, was demonstrably superior for reconnaissance and light transport. German units were actively seeking to capture and use enemy equipment, suggesting serious deficiencies in Wehrmacht vehicles. Meanwhile, Jeep production in America continued accelerating. By end of 1943, total production exceeded 360,000 vehicles. The production process had been refined to extraordinary efficiency. Willys plant workers could completely assemble a Jeep from raw components in less than 3 hours. parts manufactured in 32 states shipped to Toledo or Ford plants for final assembly. The standardization was so complete that parts from any factory would fit any vehicle. A carburetor built in Wisconsin worked perfectly in a Jeep assembled in Kentucky. Compare this to German logistics, where different vehicles required specific parts from specific manufacturers, creating nightmares for supply officers trying to keep mechanically diverse motor pools operational. Every Jeep in the field could be maintained with parts from any supply depot. This interchangeability, combined with massive production volumes, created a logistical advantage unprecedented in military history. The transformation in German attitudes accelerated dramatically with the Allied invasion of Italy in September 1943. In the mountains of southern Italy, where roads were primitive and terrain brutally difficult, the Jeep's advantages became overwhelming. German forces found themselves outpaced by American reconnaissance units in Jeeps that could navigate mountain trails impossible for heavier vehicles. German counterattacks relying on surprise found American units almost impossible to surprise because Jeep-mounted patrols provided constant intelligence. Every American infantry regiment had approximately 145 Jeeps assigned. German regimental commanders might have a handful of staff cars and motorcycles. Their American counterparts had fleets of Jeeps that could rapidly reposition troops, evacuate wounded, move supplies, and provide mobile communications. The casualty evacuation capability particularly impressed German medical officers. American Jeeps could be quickly converted to ambulances by mounting stretchers across rear seats, meaning wounded soldiers reached field hospitals within minutes. German wounded often faced hours-long journeys over rough roads in conventional ambulances. In December 1943, General Lieutenant Friedrich Schultz, captured near Cassino, was interviewed by American intelligence. When asked about American equipment, he stated flatly that Nazi generals admired the Jeep more than any other American material. It was the vehicle they most liked to capture for general use. This assessment from a senior German officer marked a complete reversal from the dismissive reports of early 1942. By early 1944, captured Jeeps had become so prized that special orders were issued regarding their use. Captured American vehicles were to be clearly marked with German insignia to prevent friendly fire. Maintenance crews trained specifically on Jeep mechanics. Fuel allocation for captured vehicles received priority despite higher consumption. The reasoning was simple. A Jeep could accomplish reconnaissance missions requiring 2 or 3 German vehicles. Operation Greif during the Battle of the Bulge provided the most dramatic example of German desire for captured Jeeps. When Hitler ordered Otto Skorzeny to conduct special operations behind American lines, Skorzeny specifically requested large numbers of captured American vehicles, particularly Jeeps. The plan required German commandos in American uniforms to penetrate Allied lines and create confusion. The fact that even with Hitler's personal backing and unlimited authority, German forces could only scrape together 30 captured Jeeps revealed how difficult they were to acquire. Americans simply had too many Jeeps and Germans had too few opportunities to capture them intact. The commandos who received captured Jeeps found them remarkably effective for infiltration. Dressed in American uniforms and driving genuine American Jeeps, German soldiers managed to penetrate Allied lines and cause significant confusion during the opening days of the Battle of the Bulge. The captured commandos, when interrogated, consistently praised the Jeep's performance. Its speed allowed quick escapes, its maneuverability helped evade checkpoints, and its ubiquity meant one more Jeep attracted no attention. The invasion of France in June 1944 brought Jeep numbers to levels that astonished German defenders. The captured commandos, when interrogated, consistently praised the Jeep's performance. Its speed allowed quick escapes, its maneuverability helped evade checkpoints, and its ubiquity meant one more Jeep attracted no attention. The invasion of France in June 1944 brought Jeep numbers to levels that astonished German defenders. Operation Overlord involved landing approximately 20,000 Jeeps in the first weeks. German forces defending Normandy found themselves facing an American army with mobility beyond anything they'd encountered. While German infantry divisions relied primarily on horse-drawn transport with only a fraction motorized, American divisions were fully mechanized. Every German after-action report from Normandy mentioned American mobility advantages. The Jeep was central to this advantage, serving as scout car, command vehicle, communications platform, weapons carrier, ambulance, and general transport. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding a Panzer reconnaissance battalion, wrote in his memoirs that he personally used a captured American Jeep for several weeks after his own vehicle was destroyed. He found it superior to German reconnaissance vehicles in almost every respect except fuel economy. The German fuel shortage in France during summer 1944 made captured Jeeps increasingly impractical to operate. Even when German units successfully captured Jeeps intact, operating them became difficult as fuel supplies dwindled. Some commanders ordered captured Jeeps used only for critical missions to conserve scarce fuel. Others simply abandoned captured vehicles when fuel ran out. This created a perverse situation where German forces desperately wanted American Jeeps but often couldn't use them effectively even when captured. The technical comparison reveals why German soldiers so strongly preferred the American vehicle. The Kübelwagen weighed 1,600 pounds versus the Jeep's 2,100 pounds. It was powered by an air-cooled engine producing 23.5 horsepower initially, upgraded to 25 horsepower in 1943, still less than half the Jeep's 60 horsepower. This gave the Kübelwagen approximately 15 horsepower per ton, while the Jeep achieved 28 horsepower per ton. The performance difference was dramatic. The Jeep could accelerate faster, climb steeper grades, and maintain higher speeds. The Kübelwagen's top speed was about 50 miles per hour on roads, struggling to maintain this off-road. The Jeep approached 55 miles per hour and could maintain 40 miles per hour across rough terrain. In steep terrain or any situation requiring maximum traction, the Jeep's four-wheel drive proved superior. American testing showed Jeeps could climb 60% grades fully loaded. The Kübelwagen could barely manage 30% grades with similar loads. The production statistics reveal the true magnitude of American industrial advantage. From 1941 through 1945, Willys produced 361,339 MB Jeeps. Ford built 277,896 GPW Jeeps. Combined production exceeded 639,000 vehicles built to identical specifications. Germany produced exactly 50,435 Kübelwagen during the entire war. America built more than 12 times as many quarter-ton vehicles as Germany. The ratio became even more favorable considering roughly 30% of American Jeep production went to Allied forces through Lend-Lease. Britain received thousands. The Soviet Union received tens of thousands. Free French forces were equipped entirely with American vehicles. This meant German forces faced Jeeps not only when fighting Americans but also when engaging British, Soviet, and French units. General Dwight Eisenhower later identified the Jeep as one of 5 pieces of equipment most vital to Allied success in Africa and Europe. The other 4 were the C-47 transport aircraft, the 2.5-ton truck, the bulldozer, and the DUKW amphibious vehicle. Curiously, none were combat vehicles. They were tools for mobility, logistics, and construction. The Jeep's inclusion in this list, selected by the Supreme Commander himself, testified to its strategic importance. At peak production in 1944, combined output exceeded 15,000 Jeeps monthly, averaging 500 per day. The logistics required coordination across hundreds of component suppliers, with engines, transmissions, axles, and body panels converging on assembly lines with precision timing. By 1944, the man-hours required to build a Jeep had dropped by nearly 40% compared to 1941, even as production volume increased dramatically. The final year of the war saw German forces in complete collapse. Fuel shortages, ammunition shortages, and disintegrating logistics meant even when German units captured American equipment, they often couldn't use it. Abandoned American vehicles littered German roads as forces retreated. Yet even in these desperate final months, individual German soldiers continued seeking captured American Jeeps when possible. Post-war interrogations provided the final assessment. When asked to evaluate American equipment, German commanders consistently rated the Jeep among the most impressive American achievements. Some rated it more strategically valuable than American tanks or aircraft. The reasoning was consistent. Tanks and aircraft were dramatic and drew attention, but the Jeep enabled everything else. It provided the mobility, flexibility, and logistics that made American operations possible. General Major Fritz Bayerlein, who commanded Panzer Lehr Division in Normandy, told interrogators the American Jeep was among the 3 most valuable pieces of equipment the Allies possessed. The other 2 were long-range fighter aircraft, protecting bomber streams and proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells, devastating German aircraft. The Jeep made this list not because it was more powerful or deadly than other weapons, but because it multiplied the effectiveness of everything else. The transformation of German attitudes toward the American Jeep traces one of the war's most complete reversals. In 1941 and 1942, intelligence officers dismissed it as primitive and inferior. By 1943, combat units actively sought to capture Jeeps. By 1944, special maintenance crews trained specifically to keep captured Jeeps operational. Even in 1945, as everything collapsed, German soldiers still praised American Jeeps above nearly all other equipment. This progression reveals the broader story of how American industrial capacity gradually overwhelmed initial German advantages. The Jeep epitomized this process. Not through sophistication, but through production capacity, reliability, and standardization multiplied across hundreds of thousands of vehicles. It wasn't the most sophisticated light vehicle, but sophistication mattered less than having enough vehicles to equip every unit that needed them, maintaining them with universal spare parts, and employing them flexibly across every combat role imaginable. The German soldiers who laughed at the Jeep in 1941 had underestimated American industrial might. By 1943, they were trying to capture these vehicles. By 1945, they recognized that the Jeep represented everything about American power they had failed to understand. The Jeep went everywhere, did everything, and kept going, just as America had designed it to. In the end, that simple quarter-ton truck helped prove that wars aren't won by the most elegant weapons, but by the most effective ones, produced in overwhelming numbers and supported by logistics that never quit.